play basketball.
3,000! History with an exclamation point!
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied. Rockies are champions of baseball.
Well, we're going to Las Vegas for the first time. Your New York Knicks, who were the only team in the Cup era to advance to the quarterfinals now all three times, but in the last 2 years, they have had some horrid losses both times, but they finally now get to advance to the semifinal game in Las Vegas. So that's fun. Listen, I'm trying to lean into this NBA Cup as much as I can. It doesn't do a lot for me. I thought getting to the semifinals would hit. I'm excited as far as just the regular season goes. The team continues to win games. I mean, we're talking about 4 wins in a row. 15 out of 19, which I think is not being talked about enough in the NBA right now. The Knicks have won 15 of their last 19 games. That's like almost 800 ball, right? I mean, 16 out of 20 would be 800. They're 17-7 overall now. That's a 58 win pace at the moment. I believe they're 2 games back of first place in the conference, and they are ahead of Boston by 2 games, who are in third, but I am expecting them to slip a little bit. They're number 3 in offensive rating. If you go to NBA.com, they're number 4 in net rating, I believe. So they remain the clear and obvious front runner in the Eastern Conference right now, despite what everyone wants to say outside of NYC and NJ, just to have a different take and be cool. They are the front runner as they were expected to coming into the season. So yes, as far as the regular season goes, I'm super excited right now. The Knicks are hot. It's fun. I'm trying my best to buy into the NBA Cup. We'll see what happens on Saturday. Yeah, we'll see what happens on Saturday. If they win and they advance to the final, maybe then I'll feel it. But it was fun. It was a fun game. It was a back and forth game for a little bit there. But the Knicks finish it out and they defeat the Toronto Raptors in Canada last night, 117-101. A good showing for the Knicks. 1 second here. They were plus 10 on the glass of this game, plus 4 in second chance points, 11% better in field goal percentage, 17% better on their threes. And overall, again, they win this game by 16 points. You had Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson combined for 56 of the Knicks' points. Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson combined for 9 offensive rebounds. Mitchell Robinson, Brunson, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart combined for 16 assists, 4 each. Yes, Mitch was included in that. He was included in that because he's gotten much better at passing out of those offensive rebounds that he gets. But yeah, it was tough to start. I mean, Toronto was on fire, but Brunson was matching Ingram. He was keeping the Knicks in it during that first quarter. The Knicks then kicked into a whole different gear as the defense stepped up in that second quarter. And I kind of want to start this episode by talking about defense, because I feel like sometimes on this podcast, at least as an offense lover, I can kind of overlook defensive stuff. I thought the Knicks defense completely flipped a switch in that second period. Again, this was a first quarter where, hold on, why are we lagging? I'm going to try to get through this episode without this tablet skipping on me. Maybe that's what I need from Santa this year, a new laptop. It was a first quarter where the Knicks allowed 39 points to the Raptors. Toronto was making the Knicks defend in space. I thought Karl Anthony Towns had some absolutely brutal defensive possessions, just like sometimes you feel like he needs to be big. You're big, so be big. But he had guards attacking him at the basket, just not providing much resistance. Even OG Anunoby, I thought, had some tough possessions on Brandon Ingram. Some tough fouls. Brandon Ingram scored 31 points in the game. 17 of those points came in the first quarter. Toronto was throwing multiple bodies to the glass off of Josh Hart in ghost coverage. Didn't help that. There was an action where Mitch and OG were in defensively that I thought, Toronto gets an easy basket out of it. I thought it should have been an auto switch. Mitch fights over the top. He gets beat on the drive. Why not just switch that? Clarkson had some tough, absolutely atrocious defensive possessions in this first quarter. It was gross. That's all I can say. But then, again, the second quarter comes and the Knicks hold Toronto to 13 points, and Toronto really never recovered after that. They set the tone for the rest of the game, the Knicks did. And I said this on my Instagram right after that first quarter. I said, if Toronto's going to make this a shootout, they will lose this game because they simply don't have the offensive talent to match the Knicks. And I thought Wingstop was great. I thought their bigs were great, particularly Cat. But, it starts when Mike Brown, he saw enough of Clarkson in the first quarter there, and he pulls him for Tyler Kolek, even without Deuce McBride, to put Kolek next to the first unit early in the second quarter. He kept his starters in the game, didn't sit Brunson, and it paid off big. It was Kolek with the 4 starters. You had OG Anunoby turning it around. He was making some big plays in low man help again. He blocked Grady Dick. But when OG is weak side low man, that's his home, right? That's where he thrives. But he also had a nice switch onto Scotty Barnes to force a miss on a floater. You had Bridges making plays in gap help again. That's his home, right? We talk all the time this year about when he's off the point of attack and when he's in help, he's much better, right? He's seeing that role a lot more this year than under Tibbs last year. But he was making plays in gap help. He had a rear contest block on Scotty Barnes as he helps off the top, comes to the post, blocks him. He had a possession where he stunts over to Jamal Shed. It's a drive. He pokes it loose on the drive at the basket. I thought he was great in that second quarter, but I really, really liked what I saw defensively from Karl Anthony Towns, of all players, in that second quarter. I thought he had some elite stops as a 5-man, off pick and roll, in high coverage, switching on, right? He, on one possession, switches on to Ingram to force a pass out of a double once McHale comes over and help. He switches on to Ingram a little later to force a 3-point miss, contests him, he's right in his face. Ingram in the period, again, after having 17 in the first quarter, just 2 points in the second quarter, he was 0 for 3. He was switching on to Scotty Barnes, forced a 3-point miss in his face. Good on the interior also. Finishes the second quarter alone. In the second quarter alone, he has 8 rebounds, a blocked shot, a steal, and he was a plus 22. One of his best defensive quarters as a Knick, if not the best. I really was impressed with what I saw. And so the defense, I thought, turned this thing around. And don't look now, but I did look. And the Knicks are currently top 10 in defense. They've got a 113.2 defensive rating, which means, if you're new to that stat, 113.2 points allowed per 100 possessions this year. So that's good enough to be tied for 10th in defensive rating. Just 1.7 points per 100 possessions out of the top 5, though, at the moment. So that just gives you some context as to how close they are to being, an elite defense. Now, I don't think they're an elite defense. I don't even know if they're a top 10 defense. Probably not. But again, the goal here is to just be a good enough defense. Be good enough. all you need to do is be close to top 10. Can you be top 12? Can you be 12, 13 tops? That's enough because of the offense that you have. You have a top 3, top 2, maybe the number 1 offense in basketball when it's all said and done. That is plenty enough if your defense is just above average to good. Do I think they can get there? I don't know. I've expressed my questions as to if they can get there. A lot of it depends on this Brunson Cat duo, right? A lot of it depends on how good Mikal Bridges is going to be. Deuce McBride's going to be out a while, so Mikal might see some more point of attack reps. So it's tough, but they have a season to figure this out. You hope that they can. I think a big key is Josh Hart being much better defensively the last couple of weeks. And then offensively, I think the Knicks navigated those coverages on Josh Hart pretty well last night. Now, early on, it was a bit rough to watch, as I said, but I thought they did a pretty good job with Toronto cross-matching, knowing when to attack those and knowing when to pick their spots when they didn't cross-match. Now, Karl Anthony Towns had a very quiet line in this game. He only had 14 points on 36% shooting. Also had 16 rebounds, which was awesome. But, quiet line for Cat. The Knicks, I thought, did a very nice job of finding him when he had the 5 on him. Toronto wasn't always cross-matching him in Hart. So when they did put Jakob Poeltl on Cat, I thought Cat took advantage and got his looks. He got his shots up. In the first quarter, his only 2 3-point attempts of the game both came as trail threes when Hart was on the floor, but they came as trail threes in transition, so the defense didn't have time to set up the cross match. He had the big on him in those 2 threes. In the second quarter, that poster dunk that everyone's talking about from up top, D.H. O'Keefe drives on Jakob Poeltl, throws it down, flushes it. Also in the second quarter, that he has he stampedes the catch. It's a catch and drive to get by Jakob Poeltl, draws 2 free throws at the basket. Fourth quarter, there was a play. I think this was a Miami action with Kolek to drive on Poeltl and draw 2 free throws. Really good stuff from Cat when he had Poeltl on him. And then Josh Hart, right? I mean, you can't talk about this without talking about Josh Hart's offense. 4 for 7 from 3. And because he's taking open 3-point looks, and this is something we constantly bring up, because he's taking the open threes, you see how the defense starts to respect him once he does that. Toronto starts closing to him, and that's going to open his drive game. In the third quarter, Josh Hart opens up the period by taking back-to-back threes. The very next time he gets a shot, it's after that. Poeltl closes to him. It's a Brunson Hart pick and pop. And because he took 2 3-point attempts prior to this possession, off the pick and pop, Poeltl, who initially shows on Brunson, sprints to close back out to Josh Hart and kind of just, overcloses a bit. Hart blows by him for a finish, and he converts an and one on Scotty Barnes at the basket. That's how you beat that. When you're taking the threes, he can get what he really wants by forcing the defender to close to him and get to his drive game. And then you also saw other ways the Knicks were able to exploit those cross matches by putting Josh Hart in action when he had the 5-man on him, right? When he had Poeltl. A couple of Brunson baskets in that first quarter were because the Knicks had Josh Hart as the ball screener to get Brunson the Poeltl switch. All of that is key. Okay, all of that remains key to making this work, right? At least versus lesser competition like Toronto, you're going to be able to execute it a lot better than that. But yes, doing things like hitting Towns when he's got the 5-man on him, not always settling into the half court when Hart and Cat share the floor. When you're in the half court, make sure you use Hart in action. Take the open threes when the defense sends rim help off Hart. I thought all 4 of those things, among other things, but all 4 of those things especially, were key to the Knicks getting good offense last night. So it's something we're going to have to see continue. We talk about it all the time. against certain elite switching defenses is going to be more difficult against a team like the Toronto Raptors, who are much more vulnerable. Now, they are switchable, but they're not at the level of an elite defense. You're going to be able to get away with it. And I thought the Knicks are learning, and I think they're doing a nice job of doing things from last year by using Hart to screen, but also finding some other ways to exploit this coverage. So we'll see how this goes going forward. But I did think Jalen Brunson was the best Knick on the floor last night, and I don't think that's really a debate. And now Jalen Brunson has 11 game balls on the season across 24 games. 35 points last night. He shoots 13 for 19 from the floor, which means he was 7 for 10 from 2 and 6 of 9 from 3. Goes 3 out of 5 at the line. But he was awesome in that first quarter where he scored 20 of those points. Mike Brown said after the game, Jalen bailed us out offensively in the first. Yeah. And remember, that's okay. That's still okay. Like last year, their number one source of offense was Brunson bail us out. This year, it's they're doing some motion offense, maybe a little less motion offense as the season goes on, and it's more set plays. But this year, it's when we have a lot of options we can go to, but it's if that's not working, let's go to Brunson because that's still an option. It's the fact that that's not your primary source of offense anymore, which makes this such an effective half-court offense. It's in spots like last night in that first quarter when there was nothing else really working, the Knicks were getting Brunson those ISO looks. And a lot of these ISO looks that he's getting are set plays for him, too. It's not just like he's switch hunting, spamming, L1. They're actually set plays the Knicks are running to get him those switches. And I thought he was relentlessly attacking Jakob Poeltl switches early on. His first bucket of the game, again, it's a Brunson Hart DHO. Hart flips the screen for Brunson to get the switch on the other side of the screen. Knocks down a step back elbow jumper over Poeltl. His second basket of the game. It's another Brunson Hart handoff to get Brunson the Poeltl switch. He isolates him in space for a wing three. Later in that first quarter, I think it's a Miami action with Brunson and Mitch, handoff into a pick and roll. Mitch screens off Jamal Shed with Poeltl on a high drop. Brunson uses that space to take and make a three off the switch. Love his three-point evolution. His first season with the Knicks, Jalen Brunson shot 42% from three, but it was only on 4.7 attempts. This year, he's shooting 38% on his threes, but it's on 7.5 attempts. So I will gladly take the 4% dip in percentage with the increase in volume by nearly 3 attempts a game, especially because he's taking way more off the ball threes. So he's still getting efficient. He's getting more efficient 3-point looks. It's not as many pull-ups as when he first came here. The 4% uptick this year in threes are coming more, or the 3% uptick, whatever I said it was, 7.5 per game compared to 4.7 per game as is when he was a Knick for the first year. But a lot of them are assisted threes, right? There is a 4% uptick this year from last year in assisted 3-point attempts that Brunson's making. Just watching, you're seeing him use as a ghost screener in pick and pop, as a back screener in Spain actions, just spot ups. Last night he had a couple of catch and shoot 3-pointers off of a Mitchell Robinson offensive rebound. Really good stuff from Jalen Brunson as he continues to be a top 10 player in basketball and one of the more underrated superstars in basketball because he's not flashy and athletic and big. Going to the second unit, I thought, listen, I don't think this was Mitchell Robinson's best game. I think Yabusele's been better as a Knick. I don't think this was his best game. Tyler Kolek, he was good. And Jordan Clarkson, I think I have to hand him his 6th game ball of the year. Listen, again, utterly atrocious defense in that first half. But I did think his scoring binge late in that second quarter, off the dribble, of course, helped out the Knicks. Finishes the game with 12 points, 5 for 10, 5 for 9 from 2, 3 rebounds, 1 turnover, a plus 10 in the box score, 26 minutes. I thought he had some good buckets to keep the Knicks afloat there in the second and keep that lead pretty big. He had an ISO bucket on Grady Dick. He had a floater off of one of Mitchell Robinson's offensive rebounds. He has that ISO fadeaway on Jamal Shed. Off the dribble buckets is his game. He's not a great catch and shoot guy. Some would say he needs to be more in catch and shoot. But the problem, because the problem is when he dribbles too much, which is his strength, but when he dribbles too much, he gets a bit reckless. I think it's important when Brunson's off the floor that Clarkson's got some on-ball reps so he can get those high paint touches to spray out. But yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic with him because he's very one-dimensional. And so when he's not on fire off the dribble and he's missing spot ups and he's not playing defense, he becomes an extreme net negative. But I will give him the 6th game ball of the season because I thought he was the best among the second unit last night. So, yeah, that's what we have. The Knicks defeat the Raptors, again, 117. Okay, 117 to 101 last night in Toronto to move on to the semifinals in this NBA Cup. Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Okay, the Knicks will be playing in Las Vegas, Nevada in the semifinal against the Orlando Magic. So they're playing them again. Orlando just beat the Heat last night. Hot shooting night from Desmond Bane, who has become public enemy number 1 at the Garden. But again, they won't be at the Garden tomorrow or Saturday. Excuse me. So they got a couple of days off before they meet the Magic for the 4th time this year. The Knicks coming off a recent win against the Magic last week. Obviously, both teams a little banged up, still are. Don't think the Magic are going to have Franz. Fortunately, he is okay. It's just a high ankle sprain. But it's going to be tough for the Knicks because they don't have Deuce. Obviously, Shamit's still out. Not expecting Deuce to be back anytime soon. So we'll see. It'd be fun to win. But, I'm just looking at it as let's keep winning in the regular season. But as I said, if they end up getting in the final and they play OKC, it's a good little preview to see what could be your finals matchup at the end of the year. So with that said, we're going to head to a break, get back, and wrap this thing up with our trivia question, and that will be that. Stay with us. Be back in a sec.
Quick break here, guys. Stay connected with BD4 on social media. Follow us on Instagram and X at BD4Pod, and find us on Facebook by searching BD4. Don't miss out. Join the conversation. Want more BD4? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss an episode. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and share with your fellow fans. Don't forget to ring that bell so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. Love BD4 but don't have the time to sit down and watch? Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. It helps us grow and keeps the conversation going.
Okay. Welcome back to the show, episode 942 of the podcast. I appreciate everybody, much appreciate everybody tuning into the show, listening to the show, watching the show, sharing the show, downloading these episodes, 5-star ratings, anything you're doing, I appreciate it. So let's wrap this one up with our trivia question of the day. And our trivia question for this episode is, let me pull it up on these notes here. Last night, Jalen Brunson scored 30-plus points for the 87th time in franchise history, tying him with which Knick legend for third? All right, let me say that again. Last night, Jalen Brunson scored 30-plus points for the 87th time in franchise history, tying him with which Knicks legend for third? All right, let me know the answer. Wherever you can reach me, if you get the answer correct, I'll give you a shout-out in the next episode here of BD4. But I do appreciate you all listening. Again, be sure to subscribe to the show. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, give us a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Share this on social media with your friends. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow at BD4Pod on Instagram and Twitter or X. And you can follow BD4 also on Facebook. We have a website. If you go to bd4blog.wordpress.com, you can find our blog. That is bd4blog.wordpress.com to find the blog. I'll see you all soon. Hey guys, thank you for listening to BD4. Be sure to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time.